On this edition of In the Life, our 10th anniversary celebration of gays in the workplace. Wall Street invests in gay culture, a force for change in Detroit labor, and soldiers in a hidden war.
If you're an American citizen, you have the right to serve and die for your country just like anyone else.
All this and more on In the Life, America's gay and lesbian news magazine.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Amringen Foundation. Additional support provided by the Gill Foundation, the Overbrook Foundation, Richard M. and Peggy Danziger, James Pepper, William J. Resnick, Jeffrey B. Soroff, the Arcus Foundation, and the annual support of In the Life members like you.
Welcome to In the Life. I'm Catherine Linton. During the 10 years In the Life has chronicled the growth and evolution of gay and lesbian America, the progress we have made in the workplace has represented one of our community's greatest achievements, one that has largely been won by the thousands who integrate their identities into their professional lives. These everyday heroes clear the way for other gays and lesbians to come out. In honor of the progress our community has made on the job, of those who helped achieve it, and those who are still fighting for their right to work, In the Life is pleased to present our 10th anniversary retrospective of gays in the workplace. Our feature stories include a doctor who exposes homophobia as a health hazard, growing pains in the auto industry.
You never know if they want to get rid of it, they can do it.
And correspondent Dan Carslake's report on the battle facing America's gay and lesbian soldiers. But first, an inside look at the world of finance. Wall Street evokes a particular image, a bastion of conservatism, an old school of traditional practice, a boys' club. This rarefied institution has rarely been known for its gay friendliness, but thanks to a few courageous individuals, life on the street has begun to shift. The Gay Financial Network and its GFN 25 list underscore this new breed of activism. Andy Hum has the story.
Gay Financial Network founder Walter Schubert is a third-generation member of the New York Stock Exchange. And when he came out in 1994, he also became the first openly gay person to hold a seat there. Needless to say, it wasn't easy being the first one out in the conservative world of Wall Street.
Growing up as a gay man, I did not have anyone that I could turn to seek as a role model, someone to give me courage, someone to point the way for me. If I wanted to live my life openly and honestly. And we felt that to identify the quiet but yet constructive efforts made by individuals, those role models would encourage today's youth and other not so young folks in the workplace.
That initiative led to the creation of the GFN 25, now in its second year.
The GFN 25 is a survey done annually by GFN.com seeking to identify the 25 most powerful, openly gay and lesbian executives in corporate America.
Each of the GFN.com 25 have, in their own way, helped change attitudes in corporate America. In the Life caught up with two who offer very different examples of the kind of behind-the-scenes activism that is reshaping our economic and cultural landscape. With the Meyers Pride Fund, money manager Shelly Meyers has proven that being gay-friendly is not only viable for corporate America, it's profitable. Morningstar, the leading provider of investment information, has given its highest rating to the fund.
Those early articles in the financial press were saying, yeah, but what about the performance? You know, is this woman going to make any money? And I'm very proud to say that this is a 5-star Morningstar fund, and today one of the top 25 funds in the country. The Pride Fund is a mutual fund that only invests in companies that have written anti-discrimination policies in place for gays and lesbians. The reasons I started this Pride Fund is there wasn't a product out there that really focused on the issues of job discrimination for gays and lesbians, and I felt that tied into management teams that have the vision and the open-mindedness that I think managers need to have in order to provide superior returns here in the 21st century. And second, it's so important for gays and lesbians to start thinking about providing for their futures.
Shelly has stuck to a very disciplined approach, not sacrificing her focus on value, and yet at the same time is able to marry that with companies who also have very strong and explicit policies protecting gays in the workplace.
The first openly gay member of the senior management team at J.P. Morgan Chase, Martin Atkin, has been instrumental in the development of non-discrimination policies, domestic partner benefits, and an LGBT employee group.
I don't feel that my being gay is something that is front and center for either myself or for the colleagues around me. While I have been through my process of coming out and operating as an openly gay man in this environment, similarly, corporate America and J.P. Morgan specifically has been through many changes which reflect that same kind of journey.
Policies are changed by people. Attitudes are changed by experience. And openly gay human beings in the context of the workplace, especially in senior management levels, are changing the attitudes and the awareness of corporate America for the better towards the gay community.
We were very early in doing specific recruiting. J.P. Morgan was the first to do the DP benefits for same-sex partners. That is more broadly true now of the financial services industry. And frankly, the way in which we now approach the gay and lesbian community feels very little different to me than the way in which we approach the African-American community or the Hispanic community.
We don't just passively look for companies that have these policies. We engage company managements in active discussions about their policies. And I have a unique, not just me, but Wall Street has a very unique door open to them when it comes to company managements. We get invited to numerous lunches and dinners with the top executives. We have access to the top executives that you simply would not get walking in through the front door. And I feel like I can make a different kind of contribution behind the scenes. We are not going to have full civil rights in this country until we come out en masse. I can understand why people don't come out. People are afraid of losing their jobs. Now, we need to make the workplace a safe place.
More and more companies have to take seriously that here is a five-star fund which will potentially invest in their company, but only if that company has stated anti-discrimination policies. So I think Shelly Meyers has done a great deal to advance equal rights, civil rights for Americans who are gay. Martin has articulated extremely well for the management of J.P. Morgan that you would rather have your workforce in the office dedicated to doing a good job and maximizing their productivity rather than having them closeted and spending a great deal of energy covering their tracks and hiding the fact that they're gay.
I've been far more successful since I was able to integrate the professional side of my life and the personal side of my life in a very open and clear way. I know that will be true for most others, and it's a contribution not only to me as an individual, but to the firm. I see the benefit to the firm very clearly. We don't compete by making a better car, we compete by putting better teams of people in front of our clients. And if we're to put the best in front of our clients, we need to attract the best. And the best isn't a single complexion of person, it's a diverse complexion of person.
We're beginning to see the role models, and we're beginning to see the success stories, and we're not only beginning to see these stories, but we're beginning to see how these people have made a difference, wherein it hasn't necessarily jeopardized their jobs.
It would be great to see universal adoption of anti-discrimination policies, universal adoption of DP benefits for gays and lesbians, because I believe that those two actions by corporate America are highly visible and highly measurable.
I'd like to see the vast majority of gays and lesbians investing for their own financial security. To me, an ideal world is that we don't have to do interviews like this anymore, and that my fund becomes completely and totally obsolete.
I guess as a segue back to the GFN 25, that's kind of why We've gone out there to highlight these individuals and to highlight those corporations that are truly understanding that diversity is good for the bottom line, and it's also good for the corporate soul and the corporate culture.
I'm not going to say that that process of change is over. There's yet more to be done, and I'm sure we have, bridges yet to cross that we may not yet have fully identified, but we are certainly out there making the progress, and it's irreversible.
The Meyers Pride Fund is now the Citizens Value Fund, and Shelly continues its management with the same gay-positive criteria. At press time, Morningstar had rated it the #1 fund in its category, year to date. The Gay Financial Network's offices were less than a block from the World Trade Center and officially inside Ground Zero. We're happy to report that though they were traumatized and dislocated from their offices, Walter and the GFN staff weren't physically harmed by the attack. And with indomitable spirit, they hauled out their network servers and were back online in 14 days.
Dorothy Arzner was one of the great directors in the golden age of Hollywood, a pioneer, a gifted professional, and an unashamed lesbian. Her many accomplishments included directing Paramount Pictures' first talkie, for which she invented the now mandatory boom microphone. I'm Lee Rose, and you're watching In the Life.
Ramses, you gonna be a good boy and stop barking? Huh? Come on, Mike, let's go.
Musician, producer, and entrepreneur Joi Cardwell creates a very different kind of workplace.
You want help? I'm gay. No. That's been an open fact, I guess, since the beginning of my career. Hi, George.
I don't.
Realness is a big part of my life, and I think that young kids don't have enough role models. I am in a relationship of almost 3 years. Our nephew, his name is Michael, he lives with us here, and that's a real trip, becoming overnight mothers to a 7-year-old boy. I was born in the Bronx, literally born in the Bronx and scuttled to Queens, where I was raised. Lived there most of my life. My first performance was at 5 years old at Carnegie Hall, where I was in a dance recital. I always saw performing as something that everyone did. I started so young, it didn't seem like anything unnatural for me. I write all my own songs. What I see, could you tell me? Oh, what does it mean? I know.
It's all my voice, so I do the backgrounds myself as well. Sometimes I call other people in when I need a little weight to it.
I guess the primary message that I always try to convey is one of hope, one of oneness with all people, universal themes about love and disappointments and empowerment. Things that as a woman in particular and as a woman of color and, colorfulness, I try to make sure that my messages are always positive. I think growing up in the city has made me more open to almost anything, to other cultures, to other experiences, and I think the energy of the city definitely has played a part, perhaps more so in the past than it does now. I find serenity to be a little more appropriate for creating. The other side of my sanity is my partner. Lori is the partner in a true sense. when I can't do something, she is the person that is helping me. I think having a relationship that is actually a true partnership, is the only way that anybody who has so many responsibilities can get through them.
Hey, man. How was your day today?
Having Michael here is an exercise in patience.
Did you have science today? No?
So it's another way of, I guess, humbling myself by, living my life for a child, because that is our main focus right now. The music is something I do, and I'm in and out of town and stuff like that, but family's very important. So who wears the small shoes? The ballerina?
Mm-hmm.
Which word is ballerina? This one, this one, this one, or this one? Ballerina. We moved here to be closer to my family, particularly my mom, who passed away this year. I had a good life with her, and I have a lot of great memories. She's the one that gave me my first tape recorder and my first stereo, and told me not to mess up her records, gave me a respect for music. I never thought of that I would be this dance diva or whatever that I've been called. The persona is a person that only exists for a couple of minutes when the lights and cameras and the stage is there. That to me is almost not a real life.
I'd like to thank Gautier for this outfit, although they didn't know it was intended for me.
Once I get up on stage, I step out of my average hat and hang it up on the hook and become something larger than that, because that's what it's all about, the fantasy of being bigger than life.
Thank you very much. My name is Joi Cardwell. Cardwell.
Joi continues to share her life with her partner Lori, and the two remain close to their nephew Michael. Prolific as ever, Joi is now releasing a new album and a greatest hits compilation, both through her own record label, Nomad Industries.
Hi, I'm Roger Bart.
And I'm Gary Beach from the producers.
Right, we are supposedly Broadway's favorite couple.
And you're watching In the Life.
I think we're just the best looking.
In 1997, the United Auto Workers demanded that Chrysler add sexual orientation to their non-discrimination policy. Chrysler refused, so In the Life took a trip to Detroit.
At this point in time, the company can come at us and fire us for no reason at all. And it's not fair. It's discrimination, and you've always got a dinosaur on your back, because you never know if they want to get rid of you, they can do it.
Last fall, Chrysler refused to include sexual orientation protections in their contract with the UAW, arguing that they already had a general policy of non-discrimination. In protest, Ron and other activists organized the Campaign for Equal Rights at Chrysler, picketing for months at Chrysler World Headquarters.
Adding sexual orientation to the contract they refused. That is our goal. That is our demand. I personally, and I know many other people, that will not stop until we receive that demand.
Meanwhile, non-union employees were organizing a gay and lesbian employee association, People of Diversity.
The goals of People of Diversity at Chrysler really reflect trying to work within the corporation and within the corporate structure as an educating and advocating voice for the gay and lesbian community.
Also in the works, from a socially responsible investment firm, was a stockholder resolution.
A stockholder resolution is sort of like a ballot referendum for shareholders. When you own stock in a company will mail out once every year its proxy statement, which will ask all shareholders to vote on a number of issues.
On behalf of Chrysler shareholders, Shelly Alpern proposed a resolution calling for new policies on sexual orientation.
We were looking for 3 things from Chrysler. One, that they change the policy and be explicit about it. Secondly, that they publicize it internally so that all employees would be aware of exactly what was expected of them. And number 3, that they back up the new policy with diversity training that would cover sexual orientation issues in the workplace.
Chrysler agreed to the demands of the resolution on the condition that it not appear on the proxy statement. So far, they have revised an employee policy to include sexual orientation in its non-discrimination clause.
The new policy that came out, it was a surprise to us. We were not aware that it was happening. It's great. It's an awesome step. It really is. It's an official policy of Chrysler that actually spells out the word sexual orientation.
I think it is a positive step, but it absolutely is just a positive step. We want substantial, real, fundamental change here at Chrysler.
What's happened was the company learned to spell. They actually learned how to spell sexual orientation, but they didn't know exactly where to put it. They need to put it in the contract between the UAW and the corporation.
But Chrysler argues that adding sexual orientation to legally protected categories such as race and gender sends the wrong message.
One of the things that we think is important as a corporation is to send a message that we will not tolerate discrimination or harassment against any of our employees on any basis. And to further spell out and list out groups we felt might lead individuals who were not listed to believe that they were excluded. And our intent was to ensure that all of our employees know that they are included in our non-discrimination policy.
Martha Gravatt has been out on the job since 1989 and has suffered years of harassment.
I think that management is perhaps more willing to address a complaint of discrimination when it comes to one of their own supervisors or their own top-level engineering staff. That generally, management often has an attitude of contempt towards hourly workers, towards people who work with their hands.
We are very concerned about our employees. We believe that it is very important for us to have an inspired workforce in order to deliver the kinds of products to our customers that we want to. So to the extent that there are employees in our workforce who have concerns, we would encourage them to come forth and to have a confidential conversation with me or someone in my office so that perhaps we can give them the kinds of assurances that they would need to bring forth any concerns that they have.
But what about those who remain closeted to avoid harassment? We contacted 11 additional employees who would not be interviewed on camera, and only one would agree to appear anonymously.
It's really hard. I want to tell the people that I work with a lot, but I rely on them to be able to perform my job, and if they want to mess me up, they can. So I keep quiet and do the best that I can do.
I'm very out at work. I work with a really incredible group of people. My boss is great. He knows about POD. In fact, I run press releases and stuff by him.
These drastically different experiences at Chrysler are why some union members continue to push for the contract changes.
I mean, I believe in being polite, do not get me wrong, but sometimes you have to lay it on the line and say, you're not going to give it to, we've tried for 5 years to get this, and so we're going to pick it.
I don't just want language. There's all kinds of anti-discrimination language, but the discrimination still goes on.
I have to guard everything that comes out of my mouth to protect myself, and I do that. It's very hard. It's real hard.
According to WorkNet, a project of the Human Rights Campaign, the Chrysler Corporation now includes sexual orientation in their non-discrimination policy. WorkNet also reports that in 2000, Chrysler began offering domestic partner benefits.
1979 marked the first National March on Washington for gay and lesbian rights. The march drew between 100,000 and 200,000 marchers, depending on who you believe. I'm Mel Johnson, Jr., and you're watching In the Life.
Still to come on In the Life, extraordinary leadership in the church, and a war for gay soldiers. But first, a woman who proves that being out at work offers an opportunity to advocate for change. Dr. Kate O'Hanlan, a Bay Area OBGYN, runs her own practice. She also founded the Lesbian Health Fund, fought for and won domestic partnership benefits at Albert Einstein and Stanford medical centers, and has published many studies on homophobia in healthcare.
I get up generally some good amount before 7 o'clock. Surgery starts at 7:30 each day that I operate. And my office typically is supposed to start at 9, but anytime somebody needs to be fit in because of some diagnosis or suspicion of cancer, we'll add them in the early morning.
The office when I get there. Okay.
Hi, Terry. This is Kate O'Hanlan. I'm returning your phone calls to me. I'm sorry it's taken a little bit. I have asked Lori, and Lori has called in a prescription for you to continue the Cineril. And hopefully that will get you back into a pain-free state. And just stay on it, gal. Keep a measurement of your bone density. Get a dual X-ray absorptiometry. And keep I'm a gynecologic oncologist. That's an OBGYN who has had subspecialty training so that she focuses on the cancers of the reproductive tract. I spend about half my week in surgery. And surgery's fun. It gives me an opportunity to be artsy craftsy. I leave really pretty small incisions. It's great to see how nicely you can hide the incision, how nicely you can leave things inside. I saw my dad having fun when he was a surgeon. I may have the ureter right in my hot little hand, and I thought I could do that too.
I've only good news. Yeah, really. So we finished the surgery, and she's headed for the recovery room. The uterus was enlarged just with fibroids.
Okay.
Happy.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, okay?
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
I would love to tell you that everything was perfectly ordered and I was perfectly on time for every part of my day.
Is Laura there, please?
Here I am, late for a talk and then now late for my office. Hey, I got held up in surgery. They took my wallet and everything. No, seriously, I got held up. And so I'm going to be probably 45 minutes to, let's say, an hour. It's not difficult or hard to be out, even though there's still like a lot of lesbian and gay men who are in the closet in the medical profession. Being out is actually okay, I think. It's being an activist. It's making a political stand.
They've appeared to be, very supportive of proactive civil rights because it is in the non-discrim statement at Stanford.
So reducing homophobia could be part of my life mission. I mean, as a gynecologist, my initial goal was increasing the ability for women to self-actualize by enabling them to be more empowered with regard to their health. I'm actually doing the same thing for us gays and lesbians. Lesbians have fewer children. I give grand rounds to other doctors, other healthcare providers. I give a talk that's called Homophobia as a Health Hazard. I give them the facts about homosexuality. And they rarely get mammograms because they're not going in to see any doctor regularly. So about 60% of lesbians said that they had trouble with coming out to their doctor. They were fearful of doing it. What were they afraid of? The lesbian patients were afraid that if they did come out to their physician, they would receive a lower level of care. In fact, in one important questionnaire, a respondent said, it's like putting your health in the hands of someone who really hates you. As a physician, I recognize, and I hope all my colleagues recognize, that we have to do something about that. The American College of OBGYNs is responsible for doctors' continuing medical education, and they make some patient education brochures. After 4 years of a letter writing campaign, I finally got them to make a brochure called Lesbian Health. And while this brochure isn't everything that I would have it be for lesbians, to introduce them to all information about their health, it certainly is a good start. It'll get them in for pap smears, and it'll help them to have a healthy relationship with their doctor. And in fact, just seeing this in the doctor's office will tell a lesbian that she's welcome in that office. We doctors who are in science have contact with all the facts. We know that the psychiatric literature shows there's nothing abnormal, immoral, wrong, sick, deviant, or infectious about homosexuality. And yet we're not doing anything about it. You know, we didn't do anything about racism either. We sat by quietly and let society just plod along until very slowly people chipped away at the laws to reduce racism, at least in the legal system, so that, you know, it's not supported socially. Well, that's not happening quickly enough for me with respect to homophobia. I don't want, say, some other young gal in the Shenandoah Valley to grow up feeling as sick as I did. It's the bottom line. Are you sexually active?
Yes.
And are you sexual with men or women or both or neither?
Men.
Men? Okay. Let me check the lymph nodes. Do these lymph nodes ever swell up on you?
When I get a cold.
And they go back down? On the home front, I've had a little more time at home, and now in my 11th year with Leonie Walker, I'm having more joy than ever before. She's a great gal, and I'm blessed to be married to her. Without her, I don't think I would ever have been as bold or as aggressive, if you will, in pursuing our civil rights with respect to getting health insurance. I want every straight and gay and lesbian person to see it as their responsibility that I don't have my civil rights yet. And so I spend my life trying to help women have their health and try and help gays and lesbians have their health of mind and body.
Kate's crusade against homophobia continues to reshape medical policy toward gay and lesbian health. She and her partner celebrated their 15th anniversary in November.
During the decade that In the Life has been on the air, the movement for gay and lesbian civil rights has made progress on a number of fronts. According to the Human Rights Campaign, only 12 companies offered domestic partnership benefits to their employees in 1990. Today, 4,304 employers are known to provide same-sex partnership benefits, including more than 117 state and local governments and 148 companies in the Fortune 500. This represents a 36,000% increase. I'm Patricia Clarkson, and you're watching In the Life.
I'm Arizona State Representative and Army Lieutenant Steve May, and you're watching In the Life.
When correspondent Dan Karslake reported our next story in April of 2001, America was not at war. Given our new reality, this investigation into the fallout of the homosexual conduct policy, also known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Don't Pursue, takes on a fresh relevance.
The numbers are growing at an alarming rate. According to the military's own estimates, 3 military personnel are discharged every day because they have allegedly violated the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Don't Pursue policy. Compared to 1994, that's nearly twice the rate of discharge.
Increasingly, though, it's the military that's being accused of violating its own policy. We spoke to a young man who's currently serving in the military about how violations to the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Don't Pursue policy have affected his career.
I enlisted to travel and to serve my country. My family background also has somewhat of a military background in itself, and I just wanted to see the world.
John, not his real name, has asked us to keep his identity a secret because by simply agreeing to be interviewed, he could be putting his military career at risk.
I've gone through everything from verbal harassment, taunting, physical altercations almost, pushing. I've also received a death threat note that almost, made life really bad.
John called us a while back. He was very concerned.
Stacy Sobel is legal director of the Service Members Legal Defense Network, a group that assists individuals harmed by the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Don't Pursue policy.
He'd found out that someone had alleged that he was gay. The person had said that John made a statement that he was gay, and he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what his rights were, and he needed some advice. The command did an investigation to try to determine whether he, in fact, was gay, and they decided to keep him in.
Until I was under my first investigation, I was not officially told what the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was.
There were a number of places where the military strayed from the policy in his case. First of all, he was asked. That's the first thing, don't ask. Other service members were repeatedly asking him if he was gay or not. Additionally, he was pursued. Someone had alleged that he was gay, that he had made a statement, but there was no other evidence. And we believe that that was not sufficient to start an investigation.
In July of 1999 at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, Private Barry Winchell was beaten to death with a baseball bat while he slept by a fellow soldier because he believed Winchell was gay.
Private Winchell's murder touched me. When I thought about it and I sat down and I read the news and the articles about it, I started reviewing the problems that I had had in the past, and I wasn't surprised at all. I've been in situations where that same exact thing could have happened to me many a times.
As a result of his murder, the Department of Defense started an Inspector General survey, and that survey went and interviewed about 75,000 service members from all over the world. And what that survey found was that 80% of all service members hear anti-gay speech, and that 85% said it was tolerated to some extent. And those numbers are just unacceptable.
This Department of Defense report also characterized harassment of homosexuals in the military as commonplace. And though it's law that all service members receive training on the policy, an incredible 57% said that they had received none.
I believe people are uncertain what the policy actually means.
Reverend Bernard Wilson, who was not gay, served as a naval chaplain for more than 20 years before retiring in January of 2000.
So when you have an ambiguous policy, it's difficult to train to it because you're uncertain what you're training people to do.
Despite our repeated requests, no one from the Pentagon would agree to be interviewed for this story. We asked sociologist Laura Miller for her take on why some people feel the policy is necessary.
One argument that's been very effective in upholding people's convictions that the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy should remain in place is the argument that unit cohesion will be disrupted if open gays are introduced into the unit.
My response to individuals that say it's a morale or trust or whatever reason it is, to be honest with you, they're full of crap. I've served on an area or a command that I was able to see individuals in a non-homophobic environment, serve openly. And there was no camaraderie problem, there was no morale problem. As a matter of fact, you know, everybody seemed closer together. Like I said, they were like a family.
Straight men in the military who are worried about gay men in the military are worried that gay men are going to act toward them the way they act toward women. So pursuing, harassment, potentially assault, and they don't want to be in that position.
There's often lifted the concept that having homosexuals serve in such a closely knit environment invites trouble. That has not been my experience in the military. Morale suffers if leadership isn't doing its job, if it isn't taking care of its people. It has nothing to do with whether there are gays serving in those units, and I'm always surprised when they use that reason for not allowing gays to serve in the military.
Studies of soldiers' attitudes before racial integration reflected some of the same strength and opposition to integration. A lot of white soldiers said, I shouldn't have to be in intimate circumstances with blacks. They said differences in the races and problems that the races had getting along would lead to mistrust and discomfort in serving with one another. And a number of people have drawn parallels between the opposition by soldiers now to working with homosexuals and oppositions that happened with race.
When the forces were desegregated in 1948, there needed to be a cultural change. And certainly churches helped by declaring racism a sin. I think that's a place for the religious institutions to step in and say the attitude of our citizens against people who are homosexual or lesbian is wrong, it's a sin, and we ought to take a stand against it.
One thing the ban does, I think, is give soldiers who would have a tendency to act hostily toward gays sort of the, I don't know, wink and nudge to go ahead and do it. And also they have the confidence that gay soldiers aren't going to go complain about how they're being treated, because they know if that person reveals their sexuality, that they'll be dismissed from the military.
There's nowhere to turn to when you're in a hostile environment. You cannot turn to a chaplain, you cannot turn to a doctor, and sometimes you try to turn to a superior, and that superior will turn you in. So, and that starts a whole nother ball of wax right there.
It is very difficult for service members to have to live a lie every single day while they're serving. And it's especially difficult when the services have what they call their core values. And those core values tell service members that they are supposed to conduct themselves with honesty and integrity. And it's the double lives that service members have to lead that often make them contact us.
Why do I remain in the military after my situations and problems? First of all, I'm a fighter, I'm not a quitter. I did not realize that until after a few years of being in the service. And the main and wholeheartedly reason is because I joined the military to serve my country, to be a patriot.
In the best of all possible worlds, the United States military would have United States citizens serving fully in every and any job required to protect our nation. Whether we're gay, straight, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, whatever. If you're an American citizen, you have the right to serve and die for your country just like anyone else.
Currently, 23 nations allow gays and lesbians to serve openly within their militaries. In fact, with the exception of Turkey, the United States is the only original member of NATO that continues to ban service by open gay and lesbian people. Only time will tell how the Bush administration will handle this controversial policy.
In the first days of Operation Enduring Freedom, the Bush administration and the military suspended Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Don't Pursue. This action directly undermines their own argument that openly gay and lesbian soldiers threaten unit cohesion and morale, which are clearly critical during war.
In 1974, Kathy Kozachenko won a seat on the Ann Arbor, Michigan City Council and became the first openly gay candidate elected to public office in America. I'm Dan Butler, and you're watching In the Life.
Be sure to tune in to the next episode of In the Life, when Oscar-winning writer Alan Ball reveals the stories behind American Beauty and his HBO series, 6 Feet Under.
The guy just cruised you. Really? Right in front of me like I'm not even here. Did?
We profile a health center for the LGBT community and In the Life journeys into the rarely seen world of gay Muslims. Finally, tonight we'll meet a lesbian who works in the classroom and in the pulpit. Irene Monroe has faced and overcome obstacles all her life. At 6 months old, she was found abandoned in a trash can in Brooklyn, New York. Today, Reverend Irene Monroe is one of the country's most accomplished and outspoken theologians. In 1999, In the Life visited this incredible woman at Harvard University.
I was abandoned at 6 months. They estimated that I was about 6 months. And so where most people have a date of birth and certainly have a birth name, they estimated since they found me on July 11th that January 11th would be my birth date, assigned birth date. And I get the name Irene Monroe because Sister Irene, who was the head nun of the New York Foundling Hospital, which is in New York City, was a Marilyn Monroe fan. And so she named me Irene Monroe. Just looking at my life, I grew up in a economically distressed enclave of Brooklyn, New York, with foster parents who unfortunately were functionally illiterate. And they also, as example, showed me the difficulty of not having an education. So education was absolutely essential.
Irene and her new family partner Dr. Thea James, an emergency room physician, and their dog and cat live in Cambridge. Irene and Thea have been together for 5 years.
Thea is my best friend. My, as they say, my bestest of friends. She's really my best friend. She runs this race with me. She would say she's more disciplined. She is. I'm a little scattered.
She wakes up in a good mood every morning. She's always smiling. As a matter of fact, when I first met her, I thought it was a little weird that she'd wake up in the morning and she'd sing to the animals. You know, she'd sing to the dog, she'd sing to the cat. I thought it was a little strange. But now, you know, I'm used to it and I appreciate it. And it's a wonderful thing, you know, to wake up to someone like that every day. She's really learned what it can be like to have your partner as your best friend, and how wonderful it can be and how it can go on and it can last forever. And I probably in turn have learned that from her.
Having graduated from Wellesley College and Union Seminary, Irene is now a doctoral student at Harvard Divinity School, where she is the head teaching fellow for Reverend Peter Gomes.
Peter Gomes has been a mentor, I have to say, in my life here at Harvard. It's been quite difficult being an African-American lesbian doctoral student, and particularly at the Divinity School. So I haven't had very much mentoring, and being his head teaching fellow has been a wonderful gift.
Irene has standards, very high standards, and she takes no nonsense. She's been there, done that, and she's also a first-class academician, so she knows all of the academic games. So she's perfect in a place full of hustlers and poseurs, such as Harvard College. You can't get away with anything with Irene, and I'm glad she's working for me and not against me.
In his 1997 national bestseller, The Good Book, Peter Gomes wrote that the Bible was being misinterpreted by the religious right in order to exclude gay and lesbian people from the kingdom of God.
Well, I say that there's a tremendous burden of moral responsibility and guilt on anybody who would presume to exclude gays and lesbians and sexual minorities from the kingdom of heaven. And any Christian who presumes to speak that invites divine wrath and retribution. That is the most arrogant and wicked assumption on the part of fallible human beings of divine power. And everything that we know about God is contrary to that parochial, petty little point of view. So I think the good news, the gospel for gay people is that you may have a beef with the church, and the church may even have a beef with you, but you don't have a beef with God, and God certainly doesn't have one with you.
I do think that as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people, we need to take back the Bible. The very tool that's used as a tool of oppression, we can turn that around to be a tool of liberation. African Americans did that clearly when the Bible was certainly used as the legitimate biblical sanction for slavery, and we've turned that around as a tool of liberation. Women have turned the Bible around as a tool of liberation, and it's now our time to do the same.
Through her preaching, her participation in seminars and conferences across the country, and her weekly column, which appears in a Boston newspaper, Irene is fulfilling her call to be what she terms a public theologian.
It's important that those of us who are queer theologians to make ourselves accessible in a way to explain to our community how religion is used against us, but at the same time can be used to liberate us.
She's out there, she's getting her hands dirty, she's out there among the people. So I see her role, I see her theology as coming from doing that kind of work. It's certainly not, my experience of her is that she's certainly not doing theology from the ivory tower.
I mean, she's taking theology back where it belongs, on the street, in the newspaper, on the radio, on television. She talks theologically to people who don't know she's talking theologically, which probably is the best way to do it.
Last year, Irene wrote an article about Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, which caused great controversy, especially in the African American community.
I open up saying that his misogyny is no different than African-American Christian ministers, but that because Louis Farrakhan is in the limelight, we have a lot more quotes by him and a lot more information about how he has shaped his misogyny and homophobia. But in essence, this kind of misogyny that he espouses and homophobia is really pandemic throughout the entire, as I see it, African-American community. To have one kind of extremism shape the American culture shatters very much what democracy is about, which is about freedom, individual freedom. You can't help how you come in this world, but you certainly can help how you leave it and what you do while you're here. God's gift to us is our life, and what we do with our life is our gift back to God. So that's sort of what motivates me.
For all of us at In the Life, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next month.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Amringen Foundation. Additional support provided by the Gill Foundation, the Overbrook Foundation, Richard M. and Peggy Danziger, James Pepper, William J. Resnick, Jeffrey B. Soroff, the Arcus Foundation, and the annual support of In the Life members like you.